We've all had that moment when we feel like we're not enough because we have normal human thighs that touch, or because we don't naturally have a flat belly that only liposuction could provide. We've all stood in front of the mirror crying and desperately wishing that we looked just a little bit like someone else. In short, we have all fallen victims for beauty standards. I mean, I know for a fact that I have. Hi, guys. Welcome to the third episode of Who Does She Think She Is, a podcast where we understand the patriarchy, learn who benefits from it, and dismantle it all with a side of tea. Today's episode is all about beauty standards and how it relates to patriarchy. These moments where we feel as if we're not enough, they are not personal failures. Instead, they are learned reactions. Beauty standards are not natural or accidental. They were built over time through history, power, and repetition. In this episode, we will trace the roots of beauty standards, explain how patriarchy shaped them, and show how they are still kept alive today. Beauty standards are socially or culturally accepted ideas of what is considered physically attractive or desirable in a person. They are, in short, socially constructed ideas of attractiveness. Obviously, we know that they changed according to time period, culture, and geography, but they have always been influencing how people are treated. They decide who is respected, trusted, or dismissed. Beauty standards are often mistaken for personal taste, even though they are learned. So, now let's see why they came to be. Like, there are many theories of how and why beauty standards came to be. When we go back to the early ages, we find that beauty standards were actually really deeply entangled with survival and biology. Early beauty preferences were tied to survival needs. Physical traits that were seen as attractive or beautiful in the early days often signaled health and fertility. Clear skin showed that the person had low disease risk. Symmetry showed that they had genetic stability, and shiny hair showed that they had adequate nutrition. In this way, beauty standards early on, they were often just tools of determining if a person was healthy or not. Moving on to body size, which is something that's like in all of our minds even today. In societies with food scarcity, food scarce societies, fuller bodies they were seen as ideal because they symbolized survival and wealth and showed that the person had enough nutrition. While in food abundant societies, thinness was seen as ideal because it symbolized self discipline, restraint, and status. So, beauty standards were never about beauty. Instead, it was just about what society needed. And as societies, they became more structured and they became more hierarchical. Beauty now became a visual sign of power and class instead of just signaling health. It signaled power, status, and class. Let's take ancient Egypt, for example. Here, smooth skins, cosmetics, and symmetry were they weren't just for aesthetics, they symbolized dignity, privilege, and access to resources. In ancient Greece, perfect proportions and symmetry weren't just beautiful, they represented moral and cultural ideas. Those ideas, we can see that they still influence Western beauty. Think of statues and classical art. In medieval Europe, this is interesting, pale skin was really prized. Why? Because it simply showed that you were not working out in the sun. It showed that you were not doing labor work outside, and it showed that you had class. Your body literally displayed your class. So beauty became a language of hierarchy. It said who had power, who had wealth, and who was expected to be obedient. Let's Okay, a good example of thinking about this is how today we think of wealth as when we see someone with designer clothes or cosmetic procedures, we immediately think of them as wealthy. Back in the days, this designer bags and cosmetic procedures, they were pale skin and cosmetics because that was something only rich people had access to. Moving on, colonialism was a major turning point for beauty standards because here European features, light skin, narrow noses, and straight hair, they were seen as civilized and superior, while non European features were excised, erased, or they were deemed unattractive. These beauty ideals, they were not neutral. Instead, they supported colonial power structures. Many modern beauty standards, they are actually still like colonial leftovers and not universal truths. Even today, skin lightening products, hair straightening trends, and global media often reinforce this historic hierarchies. Moving on to the modern era. Today, in today's time, media, social media, and capitalism in repetition, they have totally like, how do you say, they have turned beauty standards into mass produced, monetized, and algorithmically reinforced pressures. Photography, film, advertisement, and especially social media, they constantly show us what's supposed to be ideal. Filters, influencers, and trends, they make it seem like a choice, like it's your choice. Do you want to follow this or not? But when social approval, safety, and opportunities they're all so deeply tied to appearance, the choice really becomes conditional. Now, let's move on to the big question of today's episode. Do beauty standards even relate to patriarchy? Do they even have anything to do with it? The answer is yes, absolutely. And both of these are so deeply intertwined that if I was to sit here and talk about it, I'd be here for a really long time. So I'll try to sum it all up in like points. To say it simply, we all know that patriarchy structures society around male dominance. And beauty standards, they're one of the most effective tools that help maintain this dominance. Of course, they do this by regulating women's bodies. So, how does this happen? How do beauty standards uphold the patriarchy? They reduce women's value to appearance. At the core of patriarchy, there is this idea that a woman's primary value, her worth, lies in how she looks rather than what she does. Of course, beauty standards they reinforce this by making appearance a central measure of worth for women. So while men they are more often evaluated by how much power they have or their intelligence and accomplishments, women are solely judged on the basis of how they look, and their social acceptance, respect, and opportunities is all tied to beauty, which ultimately limits their perceived roles in society. Another way by which the patriarchy is upheld by beauty standards is by internalizing control. We know that patriarchal control is most effective when it feels voluntary. It's best when you think that you're doing it willingly. Beauty standards encourage self monitoring. So women they regulate themselves without external enforcement, and it honestly it almost seems like a choice that you're doing it. It almost seems good. A good example of this is skinny culture. Instead of being enforced by laws or authorities, thinness is promoted as self discipline, self care, and personal responsibility. So, of course, women are there. They're encouraged to monitor their bodies, count calories, tracking weight, and whatnot. Because no one needs to explicitly punish them because the pressure has already been internalized. This makes control feel voluntary, honestly, even empowering. But the main goal of this, of all of this, is to make sure that they're so, they all their energy and all their time is bent on punishing themselves, on taking care of their beauty and, getting skinny or whatever, that they are so distracted from the challenges and inequality that is happening around them and to them. So the main what beauty standards does for patriarchy is that it takes all of women's attentions to things like beauty and appearance and, trying to be this ideal thing that does not exist, that they forget about everything that is happening around and to them. Next comes the concept of social reward and punishment. So, under the patriarchy, women who fit certain beauty standards, they are often rewarded with social approval, attention, and perceived legitimacy. While those who do not fit certain boxes of society, they face ridicule, invisibility, or moral judgment. This creates a system of behavioral reinforcement where compliance is praised and resistance is penalized. Over time, this trains women to associate safety and acceptance with meeting appearance expectations. Beauty thus becomes less about self-expression and more about social survival within patriarchal norms. And this is also something that is not, talked about enough. These standards, they also help in centering desirability over autonomy. Patriarchal systems center women's desirability, how appealing they are to others, over their authority or autonomy. Youthfulness, delicacy, and softness are often, idealized because they align with dependence and non-threatening femininity. These traits are not randomly attractive. They support a power imbalance in which women are positioned as objects to be evaluated rather than agents with control. Beauty standards thus reinforce these hierarchical gender roles rather than neutral aesthetics. So, in doing so, authority and independence become secondary. This leads us to our next point, which is the moralizing of appearance. Historically, patriarchy has moralized women's appearance, framing beauty as a duty rather than simply a choice. Women are expected to be attractive but not vain, modest but appealing, standards that are often contradictory and impossible to fully satisfy. I mean, come on, you're allowed to feel confident over yourself. When beauty becomes tied to morality, failure to, fulfill this is treated not just as unattractiveness, but as a personal failure or social defiance. This moral pressure strengthens patriarchal control by turning appearance into a ethical obligation. So how you look automatically becomes linked to how much you are worthy of what you deserve and what you don't deserve. Now let's come back to today. Let's talk about the current era. Today, beauty standards, we know that they don't just exist. They're sold to us. What makes this era different from the past is not that beauty standards have disappeared, but that instead, like patriarchy and inequality and so many other things, they've simply been rebranded. Today, beauty isn't usually forced on us. Instead, it's framed as something we choose. We're told we're free to wear makeup or not, to shave or not, to change our appearance or to leave it alone. But these choices don't exist in a vacuum. Society still rewards certain looks more than others, which quietly influences what feels like a choice. So, what feels like a choice might actually not be one. Instead of saying you must look like this, modern messaging focuses on confidence and self improvement. Pressure is reframed as self improvement. The idea is you don't need to change, but hey, you might feel better if you did. This shifts beauty from a social pressure into a personal responsibility. Oh, you don't have to lose weight, but wouldn't you feel better if you did? Oh no, you don't have to dye your hair, but wouldn't you feel more confident if you did? All of this makes insecurity feel like an individual issue rather than a shared one. Similarly, beauty becomes now has become something you're expected to invest in. Makeup, skincare, procedures, and wellness trends, they are often marketed as self-care or empowerment. While many people enjoy these things, I do too, but the pattern matters. When confidence is tied to spending and constantly improving, beauty becomes something you're always working on rather than something you already have. And of course, in today's world, we can not talk about social media. Social media is like highly visual. This has turned beauty into visibility. Appearance plays a big role in who gets attention. People who fit certain beauty ideals, they often gain more likes, followers, and opportunities over time. Beauty becomes linked to visibility and validation, even when it's not talked about directly. Moving on in now, like altered appearances have started to feel so normal. Filters, editing apps, and cosmetic enhancements, they are extremely common. Because of this, edited and curated appearances start to feel normal. We literally stop comparing ourselves to celebrities and start comparing ourselves to peers and influencers, even though those images are also carefully controlled. And this leads to us monitoring ourselves constantly. When beauty is framed as a choice, we often blame ourselves for not meeting the standards. This leads to constant self checking weight, skin, clothes, hair, face, and our body starts to feel like a project that is never finished. Of course, all of this has real mental health effects that we all know about, that we all have felt before. Being surrounded by idealized beauty images has been linked to body dissatisfaction, anxiety, and low self esteem, especially among young people. Because this pressure is everywhere, it often goes unnoticed. But that doesn't make it harmless. Now, of course, as people begin questioning beauty standards, ideas like body positivity and self love have become more popular. These movements have greatly helped so many people feel seen and safe, me included. But now, even these ideas, they are often very simplified and they are packaged in ways that stay socially acceptable and visually pleasing. It's been being used as an aesthetic, like brands just slap the slogan of self-love and being the best version of yourself to sell their products. It is thus very important to understand that many insecurities are actually learned and not natural at all, because this can be very freeing. When you feel the urge to fix yourself or fix something about yourself, asking where that feeling came from can shift the focus away from self-blame. This doesn't mean quitting social media. It means being mindful, following people who show honesty and diversity, remembering that most content is meant to influence or sell something can reduce the pressure. I know it sounds simple, it sounds like something you've been told again and again, but it works. Looking a certain way does not mean you are better, more disciplined, or more successful. And not looking that way doesn't mean you failed. Separating appearance from value weakens the power that beauty standards have on ourselves. Beauty standards feel strongest when people think they're alone. Open conversations help reveal that these pressures are shared and socially shaped, not personal failures. Challenging these standards doesn't mean rejecting beauty or self expression, it means choosing consciously how much power those standards have over your self worth. And that is a wrap on the third episode. Thank you guys for staying with me until the end. And remember, how you look doesn't define what you deserve or what you don't deserve. It doesn't define what you're worth of and what you're not worth of. Have a great day. I love you all and see you next episode. Bye.